Ladies and gentlemen, you know what time it is. Welcome to your favorite community call here in the Convention Center at 88 MPH. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Whipper, and I'm a crypto enthusiast and a community volunteer at 88 MPH. Today's call is going to be jam-packed with some serious alpha updates and more, so please stay tuned all the way to the end. Before we get started, I want to give a huge shout out to the 88 MPH team and congratulate them on shipping V3. Way to go, guys. Today, we have the special pleasure of hosting Ichi once again on our community call, so thanks to the Ichi team for coming out. Before we dig deep into the call, I'd like to remind everyone here on stage to please keep their mics muted unless they're speaking. If anyone in the audience has any questions or comments during the call, please feel free to raise your hand so we can bring you up on stage. As with tradition here at 88 MPH, we will be closing the call with a $100 raffle giveaway in the form of 1 MPH tokens, as well as minting POAPs for those who join the call. On the agenda today, we will be discussing stablecoins and the use of 1 MPH, regulation and the recent SEC actions, news and updates from both 88 MPH and Ichi, followed by our raffle and the minting of the POAPs. With that, I'd like to open the call with Brian from Ichi. I know we had you on before, but for those that are joining us for the first time, can you please give us a brief introduction into who you are, how you got into this space, and what is Ichi Farm?
Hey, thank you, Whipper. Yes, so Ichi is a project that solves 3 critical problems for any other crypto project. The first is seamless user adoption. The second is how to drive value to your scarce token, and the third is really how you build an ecosystem on top of your protocol. So we, in past, working with other crypto projects, I've been a board member and advisor to several. You couldn't really solve all of these problems. You were blocked on the user adoption side, normally by trying to explain to them what this new token you've created is. For example, I have a Crypto.com debit card, and to use it, you deposit $10,000 of CRO. You get 5% cash back on all your spending. When I tell friends about that, they wonder what CRO is. 9 out of 10 drop because they don't understand it. What Ichi enables is to have your own branded dollar, so a dollar that can be expressed as a dollar equivalent balance. It's something like a MPH that can just be seen as a savings amount. But unlike using something like USDC or DAI, this branded dollar drives scarcity to your token. Problem number 2. So as people use it, as they adopt it, more and more of your scarce token, MPH in this case, is stored in the contract. So the 1 MPH that we've already launched, you have to buy MPH tokens to mint it. You don't have to buy those MPH tokens to mint DAI or USDC. And then on ecosystem, many of the projects we work with have grants. The grant recipients typically need to cover development costs, building costs, need to transact in whatever they're building. And today they often sell the token denominated grant for dollars. And then it's kind of hard to drive the value back into the protocol then. With a 1 MPH, you can pay those grants in dollars as a condition. They should accept that as a form of deposit or medium of exchange within their application. And you can build this economy on top of your protocol that drives, again, scarcity back to the MPH token.
Perfect. That's awesome. We're going to dig definitely deep into that. What about yourself, though, Brian? Maybe you can introduce yourself and how you got into this space, when you got into it, what brought you into it. We'd love to hear about that, too.
Yeah, so I have a background where I was managing a large online economy at Amazon. Started a financial services business for them in Europe called Amazon Lending. Once I saw Ethereum, I knew I wanted to work in this concept of programmable money and joined IBM Blockchain. I got IBM to participate in some public networks, but we were blocked by the same 3 problems that I just mentioned, and Ichi was created as a way to solve those problems.
That's awesome. McFly, for those that are joining us from the Ichi community, maybe you could just give a quick introduction into what 88 MPH is and why they would like to stick around and find it interesting.
I think McFly maybe doesn't have very good connection, so shall we go ahead and do it ourselves, Whipper?
Yeah, sure, unless Ephraim, if you want to jump in, or we could do so.
Yeah, go on, Z.
Yeah, it's fine if you guys do it.
Your mic is echoey as well. Okay, so for those that don't
now he's a robot.
ATMPH is a fixed rate lending protocol where you can deposit your stable coins or at the moment there's some V-Link, there's some Ethereum pools coming and a few BTC pools where you can stake these assets and receive a fixed rate yield on your assets. There's a multi kind of product ecosystem being built out, structured financial products such as zero coupon bonds and floating rate bonds. And we've just released a brand new V3 model, which is ultra retail friendly, looks good, works better, and is ultra composable for other projects to build with ATMPH under the hood in their protocol.
Well said, Josh. All right, let's bring it back to Ichi. Brian, so take us back to the beginning. I know you touched a little bit about it in your introduction. So in my opinion, I agree with some of the things you said. I think one of the most needed products that Ichi is fulfilling right now is this in-house token, so to speak. So I just want you to sort of take us back to the beginning. What was like the real driving or motivating factor behind the project, and how did it start out?
Yeah, so again, I guess really last summer, so we saw Compound and their liquidity farming. Then we saw Uniswap and SushiSwap do it, and people wanted to deposit stable assets into these protocols, and then earn these governance tokens. So MPH does the same thing. People deposit stable coins on MPH's into MPH's protocol, and they earn MPH governance tokens by doing that. Now, if they then want to take their profits and reinvest them and use the protocol to a greater extent, they have to sell the MPH tokens to reinvest those profits. So that just transfers risk from these stablecoin depositors and users of the system to the people governing it. So we didn't think that should be the case. We thought that the usage should drive value to the governance token. So again, they want to deposit $1 and earn yield. If they deposit a 1 MPH, they had to buy an MPH and deposit it to mint that stablecoin, or somebody else did if they happened to swap for it. So you could put all the same systems in place, only instead of having your scarce tokens sold off to use your system, people would have to buy it to use your system.
So again, I'm asking some very basic questions, Brian. Obviously, I'm very well aware of Ichi. I've been a part of your community for a long time, but this is just for the sake of the people that are joining us for the first time. Can you explain how one tokens are created and how they're actually backed?
Yes, so each one token is worth $1, exactly $1. You mint it for exactly $1, and when you're done with it, you get back exactly $1. But when you mint it, you pay that dollar in two parts. With one MPH, you pay it in part USDC and part MPH token. When you're done with it, you can turn it in for exactly 1 USDC. So then the contract's going to store that MPH it received. So the goal here is to have people use the 1 MPH for their dollar deposits or participation in MPH protocols, and as usage increases, more MPH tokens are paid in, and hodled by the system, increasing the value of your governance token.
Maybe you could just break down what the actual breakdown is. So when someone pops into, app.ichi.org, they want to mint some tokens. How much USDC are they putting up, and how much, let's just say in our case, MPH are they putting up to mint these one MPH tokens?
Just a sec to check today, because this is a variable rate. And what's more important are what levers you can pull to make the percentage of MPH increase. So it's different today than it might have been another day, and I'd have to check to see what it is today. Just a second.
Yeah, no worries.
So right now it is 90% USDC and 10% MPH. So if you wanted to mint 100 MPH tokens worth exactly $100, you'd pay $90 of USDC and $10 of MPH tokens. Now, the reason it's 90-10 as opposed to something like 80-20 or 70-30 is that the MPH treasury itself isn't very big. I think in the relationship we had with you guys, there wasn't a large pre-deposit to that treasury, and as a result, the reserve rate, that minting percentage needs to be kind of high. Now, other projects we work with just store some of their idle treasury in this contract, and it helps facilitate decreasing the minting ratio. So that's something to consider.
Right. But what's interesting is one MPH is actually one of the bigger coins with Ichi, is it not, in terms of like deposits being held?
At the moment, I think I think there's 864,000. I'm looking at it right now. Others have quite a bit more. I think it's the second to the smallest. So the smallest, it's not the smallest, but it's the next to that.
Right. So, go ahead. Were you going to say something, Brian?
No, I really wanted to tell you it was the biggest. I think MPH could absolutely make that so with just a few decisions or tweaks, but it's not today.
Right. And in your opinion, what has been the best use case right now for some of these one tokens? Maybe you could sort of mention some really successful use cases that would really create a lot of adoption. And I'm asking, even for us, as a community here, we want to get more use case out of our one tokens. What have you seen that's been really working well? And, what sort of things can you recommend for us as a community?
Yeah, so we have three major markets here. One of them is with marketplace networks like Filecoin. Another one is with layer one networks, some of which we haven't announced the launches on. So I'll set those aside. The third and the most important area for this discussion is DeFi. And again, in DeFi, like MPH, people like to track their positions in dollars. People deposit a lot of stable coins to MPH. You have to sell the MPH token to get them. If those same deposits were converted to MPH, one MPH, you would have to buy MPH to tokens to do the same thing. That's the use case. And we've just had incredible response to that across the DeFi ecosystem. And just stay tuned to watch some upcoming Ichi launches as a result.
At what point does the ratio really start to change? I know you mentioned something about treasury. Can projects get in situations where they're minting, let's just say 60% USDC and 40% of their token? At what point do things really start to change and you really start to feel that effect of the tokens being held in and securely being hodled?
Yeah, so over collateralization has to grow. right? You can't just take in scarce tokens and promise people $1 back if you don't have over collateralization. Now, over collateralization can grow in a variety of ways. One of them is investment returns. So the collateral and treasury backing the stable asset can be invested across DeFi and earn yields. Another way is that the redemption fees stay in collateral. A third way is that the value of the treasury could rise against dollars. So if MPH value went up against dollars, that's a good thing. If it goes down against dollars, that's a bad thing. But the most important way is that projects simply use this as a new wallet for part of their treasury. So they make what we call a loan into it. It's still their money, but it's stored in this wallet. Now, when projects do that, you can instantly lower the minting ratio. So that's probably the most exciting lever, because what may take years organically can happen, in a single block, right? You just deposit the funds and lower the minting ratio.
Right, totally. And can you talk a little bit about how each project sort of governs or uses their over collateralized surplus that's in each pool?
So today it's first used to provide one token, is what we call it. So one MPH USDC liquidity on Uniswap v3. Now what that enables is now anybody can take any asset they have and get the stable MPH. They can go from the stable MPH to any other asset on Uniswap v3. That's important. The second way is to get both the stable asset and your regular asset into a lending platform. So one of Ichi's partners is Wing.Finance. They're a great place to start. They would likely be willing to consider a proposal to list both assets. And what that does is it enables you to supply your MPH tokens and borrow your stable MPH, or supply your stable MPH and borrow your MPH tokens. Either way, right? So that's an important second use case. From there, we also have insurance providers, so you can use part of the treasury to provide insurance liquidity against the entire MPH protocol, and the treasury could be used to help supply that liquidity. The people aren't really taking on much additional risk. If MPH is hacked, that's bad for them as stable MPH holders. But as other people want to insure themselves, they could pay money into the one MPH treasury by essentially buying the coverage. So that's just the first three use cases. We just see more and more of them. So Ichi strategies get developed and whitelisted, and these treasuries can be used to increase value for the MPH community and drive usage in numerous ways. One of the ones that might be most exciting for MPH would be that as that yield and other things come into that treasury, it could be repurposed as a way to enhance the yield to depositors. Obviously, we haven't done that yet, but that would make a lot of sense given what you guys do.
And right, maybe you could talk a little bit more about that, because that's obviously very interesting to us, talking about fixed lending and borrowing and stuff like that. What would you envision, or how would you put this money to work? Like, what would be some good strategies that could really earn some decent yield across the board and add more value to these one tokens?
Well, again, today, all the money that is, when you sell MPH tokens for USDC and you deposit USDC, the only parties making any sort of yield on the deposits backing USDC are Centra and their stakeholders or stockholders, right? the MPH community, the people who deposit it, make nothing. If you substitute stable MPH there, your community can benefit from the assets backing their stable dollar. I mean, their branded dollar.
And for those that haven't had a chance to actually visit the website, maybe you can let us know how many one tokens are there right now. And I know that you mentioned Uniswap v3, but are there any other places that's like a really good place to trade your one tokens, or is that the best right now?
Yeah, right now we've narrowed in on Uniswap v3 because it doesn't. I mean, there are other stable swap protocols like Curve, but they have lengthy governance processes, and don't really add a lot of value. I mean, right now you can make $50,000, $100,000, $200,000 trades from one stable asset to another with basically no slippage using Uniswap v3, and you didn't have to go through this lengthy governance process to make it happen. So it's just worked out really well for us. We're talking with the Balancer team about similar things, but no news there yet. So again, it's almost that the stable swapping has become a commodity. I just expect to be able to do it at almost no cost.
Can I just jump in and ask a question, please, Webber?
Absolutely.
Sure. Brian, so you just mentioned Balancer. I was going to wait until a little bit later to ask you this, but what is it that Balancer has proposed with you? Because I was going to ask if you'd seen their new meta pools, if that was what you were.
Yeah, I think I'd have to wait for any news to come from them. But I'm just saying we're looking at other things, and I do think that they implemented a clever approach to stable swapping. So it's worthy of consideration.
Sure.
The one advantage with an approach that's taken by like Uniswap v3 though is that you haven't lost this ability to just put two assets in a pool and then have have all the trading routes come from that, so you can go from one asset to any other asset, just any to any. We did try some of the earlier, we had a balancer pool in version 1 where we had like 8 different stable assets in it, and that was just an operations and maintenance problem. I mean, we're so happy to be able to deprecate that one. So I actually am a little bit in favor of pools that are simply 2 assets, given those experiences. But each AMM has things that are slightly different. Actually, Bancor is coming up with a very interesting thing too with shadow tokens. So we're excited to mint a stable BNT when they have that ready and provide a little bit more functionality with stable coin to scarce token swapping. So we just stay up to date on every AMM's progress. But yeah, just right now, Uniswap v3 is a great spot for us.
Cool. Maybe I could rephrase the question a little bit so that it doesn't require you to divulge any information you shouldn't. The reason I looked into the Balancer kind of, in particular the meta pools, for those that don't know, the meta pools are essentially like a large liquidity pool where you can deposit multiple assets into it, and the prices relate to each other in some way. So a good example is if you can imagine 3 different types of stablecoins all in the same pool, and that would be a 3-way liquidity pool in that respect. So Brian, I'd like to ask, do you think that would be an appropriate kind of use case for one MPH to include in a meta pool like that?
Yeah, I think it's ideal because anytime you get away from the brand surrounding the stable coin. So if people have to pick between pools thinking about the brand, then yeah, recognizable brands like USDC, USDT, DAI, users are more likely to pick that, right? So, but if the person is really, the choice is percent exposure to dollars, or something more generic, and the stable MPH does exactly the same job, that presents an opportunity to swap it out. So that's what I think is most interesting about Balancer is they move towards this investment portfolio approach where it's just percent dollar equivalent, percent ETH, percent Bitcoin. You can begin to swap out one stable asset for another without impacting the returns or really the experience.
Cool. Thanks, Brian. Over to you, Whopper.
Thanks. Just a reminder to the audience, if anyone wants to chime in, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to raise your hand and we'll bring you up on stage. So let's continue with this segment. So how does the governance for each one token actually work? So like, for example, if I'm a holder of one MPH, how can I participate in governance to decide, what we should do with that treasury once it grows one day and, what sort of strategies we want to implement? Maybe you can talk a little bit about that and some of like the visions you might see other projects have. Yeah, go ahead.
So most of them start out with following default rules set by the Ichi's DAO. These are rules around minimum risk standards, maximum allocation to any particular Ichi strategy, that type of thing. One of the rules would be that any strategy admitted or whitelisted by Ichi, it would be possible to use that, but beneath the maximum set by the Ichi DAO. So that's usually where it starts. What happens if a project wants to, begin making their own strategies or doing things that are really interesting or novel that wouldn't be useful to the other stable assets, is we have to convert to governance by the stablecoin holders themselves. Now, what we did when we launched one MPH and other stable assets is we defined some minimum quorum thresholds, because you wouldn't want like 6 people saying, I'm going to take over this asset, deposit a bunch, and start governing it. So I don't remember exactly what the numbers were in the MPH proposal, but it's usually on the order of $10 million plus, with no wallet owning more than 1%. At some point, you begin to feel comfortable that you actually have enough people there to do some token-weighted voting using the one token itself. And that is the goal. Hopefully you get it to that point, it gets even bigger, and it begins to form its own governance that can honestly do whatever it wants. But between now and then, there's a default governance in place.
Cool. So on the Treasury page of app.ichi.org, there's several tabs. I was wondering if maybe you can explain that sort of each tab one by one. I know that some people were asking about that. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I'd love to drive more usage of one MPH, and I really want to get the 88 MPH community more involved and have a look. Maybe some of them haven't even come to the website yet. Maybe some of them aren't even aware that you can make some huge APY simply by minting and depositing. But I was wondering if you could just walk us through. Maybe you can explain some of like the reserve collateral and stuff like that.
Yeah. So I maybe you could put a link to the Treasury page and the minting function in the chat, because I'd hate to be
for sure. I'll do that right now.
describing something I'm seeing without other people being able to look at it. The Treasury page shows in the first column how many.
I'm going to drop it right now in the general chat. 1 second.
Yeah, it basically shows how many 1PH are minted. So, each one of those could be considered a dollar liability. You need to be able to turn them in for 1 USDC if you want to. Which is the second column that's showing how much USDC is on hand. Now you'll notice that it's usually not, there's not a single USDC for every outstanding 1 MPH. So that's where the Treasury comes in. Actually, before I go to Treasury, you'll see collateral positions. These are stable assets that also back the one token, but are deployed in DeFi. Today, you can see there is a $255,000 Uniswap v3 liquidity position in collateral positions. It's between USDC and 1 MPH. So those are principal protected assets that are also earning.
Sorry to cut in, but are those just like LP providers?
No, the contract itself provides that liquidity. So it had USDC, and then it deployed it to Uniswap v3 between like 99 cents and $1.01. So that's what we're doing now. Instead of people going and supplying the liquidity themselves, taking the liquidity pool token and putting it in the farm, people can just mint 1 MPH, deposit it on the deposit tab, and because they did that, they paid in MPH and USDC, and some of the USDC is used to create liquidity. So it's actually just an incredible user experience now with two fairly inexpensive transactions, while the contract itself uses an Ichi strategy to deposit to Uniswap v3. And then the last part, which is the Treasury and Treasury positions, to my knowledge, I don't think that the MPH Treasury has reached a size where you can profitably generate yield somewhere. You have to pay your Ethereum gas expenses, etc. So it, really what would be ideal would be to increase the size of the Treasury with an MPH loan, decrease the minting ratio, and then have the asset available on MPA.com, driving up its usage, the size of its Treasury, and then therefore its yields. But as it stands, it's kind of all done by Ichi at the moment, on the hopes that you guys will further integrate it and use it going forward. And again, you do that because instead of having a net outflow of MPH, rewards paid and nothing received, you have a net inflow or hodling of MPH, more MPH paid to deposit than paid in rewards.
And then that last tab, the reserve ratio.
Right, so it's 139% right now. The rule here is that if the Treasury is 50,000 or more, it has to be 150% or more. So it can only be 139% basically because the Treasury is so small.
Got it. Excuse me. So yeah, that you actually sort of touched upon my next question, which was just with regards to how we can get more usage for the one tokens. Maybe you can just answer this before we get into our next segment. Why would someone want to hold Ichi, and how are Ichi holders actually rewarded? So, and the reason why I pose this is because for those that are listening, when you deposit your 1 MPH into the Ichi system, you actually mint rewards in Ichi tokens, which is why you're looking at some of those APYs as high as they are. But Brian, maybe you can sort of let our listeners know why they would want to hold on to those tokens.
Yeah, so when collateral positions and Treasury positions earn yield, 80% of it is paid back into the contract itself. It stays with the MPH community. The other 20%, 10% can go to staked Ichi. So that's at the top of the screen. You can see where you can stake Ichi. It can receive part of the yield, and then 10% can go to an affiliate by default Ichi. But in the case of like a 1 MPH deposit function, that portion of the yield could go to the address defined by that use case, right? That delegate. So affiliate, I should say, affiliate. So yeah, so it's kind of set up similar to Yearn, where 10% goes back into the governance token, 10% can go to the affiliate, and 80% goes back to the beneficiary, only in this case, the beneficiary isn't a single depositor, it's the PH community.
I mean, some of these APYs are enormous. They're huge. They're monstrous. I encourage everyone to check it out.
Yeah.
Brian, what's
Go for it.
Yeah, for sure. And in terms of like sustainability with regards to these APYs, I mean, for the most part, from what I can remember, they've always sort of been around this range. But do you anticipate they can go much higher, much lower, or they stay pretty constant?
Well, I mean, I can't predict the future, but what I will tell you is that they've steadily declined. They were 300% early on, going to 200, going to 100, and now at about, 50 to 60, 70. So hopefully they continue to decline, honestly. I mean, I think that they probably will, but it hopefully not because the price of Ichi went down, but because the number of deposits went way up. Yeah.
Right, for sure.
One thing that Ichi hasn't done is any regular marketing at this point. We've instead used what resources we have to build relationships with projects and launch stable assets in partnership with projects. So probably as the awareness grows, deposit grows, and yields go down. But who knows?
Right, for sure. Okay, so I sort of want to get into the next segment of our call, which is around regulation and recent SEC actions. Brian, you're a respected figure within the DeFi space. I'd love to get your opinion on, everything that's going around with regards to SEC's action against Coinbase, with regards to their usage of USDC, Uniswap, and other DeFi protocols. Obviously, this sort of, I don't even know what to call it, but it sounds like they want to peg Coinbase as, lending out a security or whatnot. I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I don't have I don't know everything about what they proposed. I did see the tweet thread. I don't think, though, that Coinbase has had any reservations about being considered a centralized deposit taking institution, right? So it sounds like they expected to always have relationships with regulators. We have a long history of whenever you trust an organization with your funds, you'd kind of like a regulator to have your back, because when they don't, things go south. Obviously, with what we're doing with Ichi and what hopefully you guys are doing with MPH, there is no institution you're trusting with your funds. So that is the distinct difference. That's never been possible before. So I think it's going to take time for people to reason about and think about that difference. That's just never been possible before. But it is, rules that are hopefully rules that should be created and are created for fiduciaries you trust aren't applied to individuals doing things with their own keys on their own device against contracts controlled by nobody, right? Like that's the interesting debate. What a particular bank's problem is with a regulator is kind of out of my space. But obviously they should have a lot of communication because banks do bad things when regulators don't watch them.
Yeah, I feel like everyone in our space is definitely pro, positive regulation. But I wonder if you think that maybe the actions coming out of the U.S. government, different bodies, is seemingly harsher than it needs to be. And I'm wondering if you think that they potentially could kill a lot of innovation coming out of the U.S. or not.
Again, it depends on who they're going after and what the exact facts and circumstances are, I guess. And I know that I just know in the U.S. we've had huge banks that have, taking fees from people's accounts and done things and not in the best interest of their depositors. And Coinbase is a huge bank, right? Again, that's just that simple. You know, a contract running on Ethereum that you interact with your own keys is not a deposit-taking institution. It is something that you, with your individual liberties, are deciding to do and deciding to participate in. So what I hope is that those two things don't get blurred together too much. I think that the latter is highly innovative and different. Taking people's deposits and promising them a return, etc., as a banking institution, that's not new or that different. That's been around a long time.
I agree. I guess you're making reference to the recent infrastructure bill that, they sort of wanted to stuff everyone in there as some sort of a broker with reporting requirements, which is absolutely nuts. I really hope that we do see some friendlier regulation coming out of the U.S. because it would be a shame to see all of this talent either get up and leave or just who knows. I mean, we're not really sure what it means for this space, but clearly it seems that we're not really getting the clarity or the regulation that we'd like to see, but I really hope that changes, and I hope it changes soon.
Yeah, it probably it probably does happen through some series of court cases. That's usually how it happens. So the idea that somebody's going to have the perfect solution and convince everybody else of the same thing without litigation is probably not likely.
Is it possible for the U.S. government at any point to make, I forget who's behind USDC, but could they potentially just require them to freeze all transactions at any given point, and maybe if they wanted to do some sort of KYC everyone that's using the system USDC? How far could the US government go if they wanted to with regards to regulation, specifically with USDC, which is probably one of the most trusted stables out there right now?
I don't know.
Does anyone else have any input or comments that they want to chime in on with regards to regulation?
I did think it was funny. I saw someone tweet about it, and it did ring quite true. They were saying that after all the things that you can do in crypto and all the scammy things that people have kind of suffered, the one thing that got SEC to go batshit crazy was 4% APY yields on a stablecoin, which is quite funny. And for me, it just kind of shows exactly what DeFi is capable of. The thing that the SEC went crazy into was the yield bearing of 4% on USDC. That shows how much 4% USDC APY is a threat to the SEC. Obviously, there's loads of reasons, but
I mean, I just wish people wouldn't mix these two things. Coinbase has money in their account, and they have an IOU on their screen that's saying you have a deposit and should get 4%. But if the entire website shut down and all their employees went home, they would actually profit massively because they have all your money in their account, right? That's why you need to regulate them, because they'll literally just keep your money for themselves if you don't. That can't happen with a decentralized contract that everybody can read and understand how it works. You're the only one who can get the funds out of there, not the Coinbase employees who decided to keep it.
Sure. Well, I think so. Okay, so let me rephrase this then. So do you think that the SEC attacking, going deep into Coinbase, for example, is a completely separate investigation to what they will end up doing to DeFi protocols and how they will end up regulating DeFi protocols? Or do you think what happens with Coinbase kind of happens with the rest of the industry?
I think that people need to be educated on the difference, because if they even made the rule against, say, Uniswap actually couldn't do anything. The contracts are still installed and they'll keep working.
So is
Yeah, I think it's a good point that Brian's pointing out. I mean, obviously, it's like if the regulators need to understand the differences of what they're dealing with. You know, obviously, banks and centralized institutions need to be regulated. Everyone understands that. But when you're dealing with a smart contract that is open source that everyone can read and everyone understands that you're the only person with your keys that can get your funds back, it eliminates the need for regulation because there is like you don't need the regulation. It's perfectly safe the way it is.
Yeah, sure. I mean, the argument is that there's like things like rug pulls and all that kind of thing, but then the other argument is you saddle your own personal risk on that. But okay, so
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's fair. I mean, honestly, to the extent that people do actions like that, acting in bad faith, they should be prosecuted. So, but it again. But what you're talking about there is whether or not it was implemented as described or correctly or decentralized. If it is in fact implemented and running and people are using their own keys against it, my argument applies.
sure. So aside from kind of blocking on-ramps from fiat, the regular universe, into the crypto universe, how does three-letter organization police something like decentralized contracts? Open question. Probably you, Brian.
Wait, are you saying how do they regulate decentralized contracts?
Yeah, so I've
Can't.
seen.
That's my point. Like it doesn't. You
So
can make the rule.
how do they break down the system that they're trying? That's how do they get on top of the system? Is what I'm saying. Apart from on ramping and off ramping, is there any method that can be done?
Who is they? The user or the regulator or what are we talking?
Regulator.
If a contract is running on Ethereum and can't be changed, there's really no way that a rule can make it different. Right? What they probably would do is think about more the UIs and the ease. So the on-ramps, the user interfaces, things like that is probably where they would focus because they can't actually change the contracts on Ethereum.
Yeah, that's a good point, Brian. I recall that Uniswap on their front end changed a couple of those synthetic stocks that they had issued. I mean, obviously the contracts were untouched, but it looks like maybe some of the front ends may have changed. And I know that we've seen some projects like DYDX that have geopolitically blocked US, and they didn't even allow them for their airdrop and stuff like that. But hopefully we'll get some clarity and some positive regulation coming out of the U.S. I just want to remind everyone in the audience that if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to raise your hand. We'd love to get you to chime in here. We're going to move to the next segment of our call, which is just based around news and updates. So, Brian, maybe you could share with us some milestones that Ichi has either passed or is worthwhile mentioning. What would you like to share with people today?
Well, the main thing is that, it sometimes feels like Ichi's been around a long time. We got started in mid-November, but version 2, we had been working, hard, very quietly on, very hard since, I guess, January to June. So it's only 2 months old. We've launched with 6 projects in that time. We have a pipeline of dozens of more, so it's very exciting times. Projects really understand that this solves their 3 most important problems: frictionless user onboarding, growing value of their token, and really building their ecosystem. And so what we're really trying to do is just, find a way to. I mean, we're running out of bandwidth to even interface with projects and fill out proposals. We're just trying our best to meet the inbound demand and get people launched and get use cases started. So hopefully what you've heard here will kind of spark some light bulbs into how you guys can take advantage of your own stable asset within your protocol to drive scarcity to the MPH token and grow your ecosystem. because it is a powerful tool.
I've always been impressed with Ichi's connections and the projects that they've been working with. For me, as a DeFi user, it always stood out. What sort of exciting things can people expect, or what sort of things are on the roadmap down the road? I know that you guys have some different projects, maybe some L2s that you're working with, or maybe different L1 chains. What sort of things can people, without specifying a timeline, can be excited to look out for?
Yeah, so we have reached some level of agreement with multiple other layer ones. That's one thing. Another thing is we kind of hinted at this in the One Uni proposal. There's something called Ichi vaults coming. This is going to be a very exciting feature that leverages Uniswap v3 and the stable asset where I don't want to spill the beans. Just pay attention there. Watch what we're doing there. I think it's going to be an exciting option for the MPH community when we get it out. So it's just a new Uniswap v3 vault strategy.
Awesome. Looking forward. So with that, I want to switch gears into 8.8 MPH updates. Obviously, we just shipped V3. I'd love to get Zephram here. I don't know if his internet connection is better now, but just wondering if you want to update us on, how things have been going so far. Also want to open up to the audience if they had any questions or comments with regards to V3. I know that things might seem a little bit fresh, but now would be a great time to discuss some of those things.
Yeah, so this week's launch of V3 has been great. We have not seen, any bugs or issues that have been reported by users. And right now, the team is just kind of taking a breather. We've been working on this for quite a while, and we're quite proud of what we were able to ship. And as for the next steps, we in the next weeks we will focus on onboarding all the partners that we have talked to in the past few months to onboard them to integrate with 8.8 MPH, mainly to allow them to earn a fixed yield on their funds. And after that, after we have a reasonable traction for the mainnet deployment, we will then switch gears to focus on deployment on other chains such as Phantom, Polygon, and the Ethereum L2 solutions.
Super stoked. Can't wait for it. If there isn't anything else, I do want to quickly just scan the audience to see if anyone's raised their hand. Sure that
I've got an announcement, if that's okay. If I can go ahead and do that.
Josh, please, with pleasure.
In MPH.
That's awesome. Thanks for that announcement, Josh. Guys, get involved. Lot of free cash up for grabs. Definitely get involved. So with that, it doesn't look like anyone in the audience has any questions. So as with tradition here, we will be ending the call with our raffle giveaway. I invite everyone to please head over to the general chat where you will be asked to type in a number from 1 to 50, and please put that number in once only. And the person who either nails it or gets closest to will win our special prize. Don't forget, Josh, how do you want people to react for the POAP? Are you going to drop something in the
So
general?
people who are commenting, who have commented in the general chat from from the last hour, then I will send any of you guys a POAP. So if you're unsure, just drop anything, like any except a number, into the general channel unless you're doing the lottery.
Okay, awesome. Josh, if you could drop the number in our private chat and then help me scan through so we can identify our winner, that'd be awesome.
Yep, doing so now. Okay, the numbers in. Give you 5 more seconds to drop the number between 1 and, what do we say? 1 and
150.
lots of people doing over 50. If you've done over 50, you have one more chance. Looking at you, Tiger. Below 50.
Guys, 1 to 50. I see people putting in high.
Nice.
We have a tie. Okay, and we are closing off the raffle. So the number was 26, and it looks like we have a tie here between S-Chen and, see here, Rokyon. Maybe we'll split it out.
Do a 50 each.
Yeah.
Bene wants a new raffle. Between the two. Okay, yeah, go on then. Procyon and Meshen. Put a number between 1 and 10. And the closest to it gets it.
Maybe we'll just split it out, Josh, to both of them.
Yeah, we can just split it out.
Yeah, it's probably best.
Sure.
All right, everyone, thank you so much for coming out and joining us here in the convention center. We learned a lot about Ichi. I recommend everyone to go follow them in their social media groups, whether it's Discord, Telegram, social media. Check back with us to find out the latest happenings here with our next steps with V3. And as always, we want to wish everyone a wonderful day. Please stay tuned, and we hope to see you guys on our next call. Thanks for coming out.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.